Hello students, welcome to grade 10th chemistry class. The topic that we are going through is metals, non-metals and metallurgy, and this is third class of this topic. In the previous class, I have taught you about the reaction between metals and non-metals which results in the formation of ionic compounds. Now, in this session, you are going to learn about the properties of the ionic compounds. Properties of ionic compounds. You must have remembered how the ionic compounds were formed. These compounds were formed by transfer of electrons from one to the other, resulting in the formation of a new compound known as ionic compound. So here, sodium chloride, potassium iodide, barium chloride are few examples of ionic compounds. To study the properties of them, take samples of these compounds, that is sodium chloride, potassium iodide, barium chloride. Generally, these compounds exist as hard solid compounds in crystalline forms. Now, take a small amount of potassium iodide, which is a colorless crystal, and this has to be taken on a spatula. Now, heat the potassium iodide crystals on flame directly. Then it was observed that the salt is broken into pieces and changes to lilac color. So here the activity gives us the idea that when sodium chloride or potassium iodide or barium chloride, when these substances are taken and heated, it was observed that the color of potassium iodide had changed to lilac color. When barium chloride, which is white in color, is heated on flame, it imparts yellow-green color to the flame. So here, when potassium iodide, which is colorless, is taken and heated on flame directly, it has turned to lilac color. Similarly, when barium chloride, which is white in color, is taken on a metal spatula and heated on the flame, then it imparts, means it gives yellow-green color to the flame of it. So here we can generalize that these ionic compounds, when they are heated on a flame directly, they broke into pieces and impart certain color depending on the compound. So here is a list of flame colors of few metals. So here you should notice that the color of the flame depends on the metal that we have taken. Like potassium iodide, it imparts lilac color, whereas barium chloride, yellow-green color to the flame. The same way, sodium, yellow color, calcium, orange-red colored flame, barium, green colored flame, copper, bluish-green colored flame it imparts. You must be thinking why these colors, or sorry, why these compounds are giving different colors when they are heated and why they are changing their colors. This happens due to the excitement of electrons caused by the increase in temperature. Here, when we are heating these compounds on a flame directly, the temperature of these compounds increases. So when the temperature is increasing, electrons present in those atoms, they get excited. So due to this excitement of the electrons, they change their states. So due to this change in the state of electrons in the atom, the respective color flames were observed. So here what flame is observed is, what colored flame is observed is, when potassium iodide is heated, it gives lilac colored flame, barium chloride gives yellow green colored flame, sodium yellow flame, calcium orange red colored flame, barium compound green colored flame, copper compound bluish green colored flame. And this is due to the excitement of electrons that is caused by the increase in the temperature. Okay, so note down this, students, the color of the flames of different metals. So when different metallic compounds like sodium compound imparts yellow color, calcium compound gives orange red color, barium compound green color, copper compound bluish green color. barium chloride, that is barium, compound of barium, gives yellowish green colored, potassium iodide lilac color. Okay, have you all noted down? Okay, so here is the list of flames which gives us an idea of different colored metals and the respective flames. So sodium, yellow colored as we have learned in the previous one, lithium, red color, sodium, yellow colored, potassium, lilac color, rubidium, cesium, calcium, boron, iron. So depending on the metal and its state, the different colored flames were observed. This is due to the excitement of electrons present. So basing on the activity, we can define the physical nature of the ionic compounds as solids and hard due to the strong attractive forces of attraction between oppositely charged constituent ions. So here we can say that the ionic compounds are solids and they are hard. This characteristic nature to exist as hard solids is due to the strong attractive forces of attraction, because ionic compounds are formed due to the transfer of electrons. So when transfer of electrons are taking place, two oppositely charged ions are present, and due to this oppositely charged forces of attraction, the two ions combine, and this results in the bonding of a new compound, that is ionic compound, which has formed by strong attractive forces. So here the ionic compounds are hard solid substances, and these are generally brittle and break into pieces when pressure is applied. So here, though they exist in a solid form, they are brittle, means which can be broken easily. So here these solid substances, ionic compounds, are brittle in nature and they can be broken into pieces when pressure is applied. That's the reason when they are just heated, it gets broken into pieces. Now, moving on to the next property, that is melting and boiling points of ionic compounds. Ionic compounds have high melting and boiling points. The reason for this is the same, that is due to the strong forces of attraction, higher amount of energy is required. That's the reason we are heating the substance, we are heating the compounds on the flame directly. So when the compounds are heated directly, then the forces of attraction becomes weak and slowly it gets broken into pieces. So to get it done, or to break them into pieces, it needs higher temperature. Hence, it results in the higher melting and boiling points of ionic compounds. The next property is solubility. Ionic compounds are generally soluble in polar solvents like water, propanol, ethanol, etc. So, this I have covered already in the previous class. I told that ionic compounds are generally soluble in polar solvents. Polar solvents means the solvent means that is the compound which can be split into two poles like a positive or negative one. They are known as polar compounds, and hence these compounds are used as solvent. They are known as polar solvents. You must be knowing solute and solvent. That is, for example, when you are taking lemonade or sugar solution. So in this, water is the solvent. In this water, we are dissolving maybe sugar, salt or lemon juice in it. So these compounds are the substances which are dissolving in larger quantity of the compound are known as solutes, and the compound or the substance that is present in larger amounts is known as solvent. For example, when you take sugar solution, sugar is the solute and solvent is water, because sugar we are dissolving in water. So here Sugar is the solute and solvent is water. The same thing with the lemonade. So here water is the solvent. Lemon juice is solute. In that lemonade we are adding lemon juice, sugar, little bit of salt. So all these are solutes. So the compounds which dissolve in solvents, they are known as solutes. Okay. So here ionic compounds, they are generally soluble, means which we are taking it as solute here. So these ionic compounds are generally soluble in polar solvents. Polar solvent means this compound is taken in larger amounts and the nature of this solvent is polar in nature, means which can be split into two oppositely charged dipoles. So here they are known as polar solvent. For example, when you take water, it can be split into H plus and OH minus. Propanol, which is 3 carbon atoms are present in it, and alcohol is OH. This you will be learning in carbon compounds topic. Okay, even this is also a polar compound. Ethanol, the same thing. So here all the ionic compounds generally they are soluble in polar solvents. So remember that the physical nature of the ionic compounds is they are solids and brittle in nature. They can be broken into pieces when pressure is applied. Then ionic compounds have high melting and boiling points. These compounds are generally soluble in polar solvents. The next is about conduction of electricity. Since the ionic compounds are solid in state, movement of ions is not possible. So here when ionic compounds are existing in solid state, the movement of ions in them is not easy to happen. So here to move the ions in the ionic compounds, they are dissolved in polar solvents. Then they can split into ions and easy to move. So here we can say that ionic compounds, they do not conduct electricity in solid state, but when they are dissolved in water, they conduct electricity. So remember that the conduction of electricity in solid states is not possible with ionic compounds, but when they are taken in molten state, then they can conduct electricity. So here we take a note of the properties of the ionic compound. That is, first thing, physical nature. They exist in solid state. Then next is about melting and boiling points. They have high melting and boiling points. Are you writing? The next is about solubility. They are soluble in polar solvents. And then the next property is about conduction of electricity, that is conductivity. Ionic compounds do not conduct electricity in solid state, whereas in molten state they can conduct electricity. Finished writing? Okay. So these are the physical properties of ionic compounds. Students, by now you have learned about metals. What are metals? The properties of them we have seen. So based on their properties, metals are used for different purposes. Like metals are very much useful in our lives, and these metals, depending on their property, they are used for different purposes. Like gold and silver as jewelry, they are used. Copper, iron, aluminium for conducting wires, and for making utensils they are used. And many household articles are made up of alloys. But where do we get these metals? You have seen that metals are iron, copper, magnesium, zinc, silver, all these are metals. But where do we get these metals? So finding of metals is known as occurrence of them. So where do these metals occur? Where can we find them? Earth's crust is the major source of metals. Seawater also contains some soluble salts like sodium chloride, magnesium chloride, etc. Some metals like gold, silver and copper are available in free state as they are least reactive. Other metals are found in nature in combined form due to their high reactivity. We know that Earth contains three major layers. They are crust, mantle and core. So here crust is the major source of metals. The topmost layer of the earth, that is crust, is the major source of metals. Seawater also contains some soluble salts like sodium and magnesium, which are soluble in water. They are present in its compound state in seawater. Some metals like gold, silver and copper are available in free state as they do not react so easily and hence they are known as least reactive metals. Other metals like sodium and potassium, since they are very highly reactive, they exist in combined form. The compounds of the metals that occur in nature in Earth's crust are called minerals. So here these compounds that occur in nature, that can be found in nature in Earth's crust, are known as minerals. So here, what are minerals? The compounds of the metals. Means minerals are compounds of metals that occur in nature in Earth's crust. So we can define minerals as the compounds of metals that occur in nature in the Earth's crust. And the minerals from which metals are extracted without economical loss are called ores. So here these are the two words. Minerals and ores are the two key words that are related to metals. Metals exist in compound form and these compounds that occur in nature in Earth's crust are known as minerals. And from these minerals, if the metals are extracted without economical loss, are called ores. So here minerals are metallic compounds and these minerals are present in the Earth's crust. So when we are trying to extract metal from these minerals, when we are trying to extract metal means when we are trying to separate the metal from its compound, certain amount has to be spent. So here without economical loss, without much loss of money, if the metal is extracted from the mineral, then it is known as ore. So what are ores? The minerals from which metals are extracted without economical loss are called ores. Okay. The process of extraction of metals from these ores is known as metallurgy. Now let's see few ores which are listed here with their formulas. Bauxite is an ore of aluminium. Its formula is Al2O3 2H2. Then next is copper iron pyrites. So from this ore we can extract, means copper and iron both are present, but without much of economical loss, copper can be extracted. So here this copper iron pyrites is the ore of copper and its formula is CuFeS2. Then zinc blende ZnS, which is an ore of zinc. Then magnesite MgCO3, Epsom salt MgSO4 7H2, horn silver, which is an ore of silver, that is AgCl. So it is a chloride ore. Then next is pyrolusite, which is an ore of manganese MnO2. The next is hematite, an ore of iron, and its formula is Fe2O3. So here if you take copper iron pyrites and hematite, in these two ores iron is present, but copper iron pyrites is an ore of copper. This means that from this ore copper can be extracted without economic loss, and from hematite iron can be extracted without economical loss. The next is zincite, which is an ore of zinc, and formula is ZnO. Then rock salt, which means sodium chloride. Then next cinnabar HGS, mercury sulfide. Then magnetite Fe3O4. So here Fe2O3 is hematite and Fe3O4 is magnetite. Both are ores of iron. The next is galena, which is an ore of lead, platinum, that is PbS. Then gypsum, CaSO4 2H2O, an ore of calcium. Limestone, CaCO3, ore of calcium. So the name two ores of calcium. If suppose you are asked to write two ores of calcium, then gypsum and limestone. Sometimes you are asked to write the formula of the ores, and sometimes you may be asked to match the ore with the metal. So this table is very much important for you. Then the last one is carnallite. KCl MgCl to 6H2O is an ore of magnesium. So magnesium is also having two ores, that is carnallite and Epsom salt MgSO4 7H2O. Magnesite MgCO3 is also ore of magnesium. So the three ores of magnesium are magnesite, Epsom salt and carnallite. These are the three ores of magnesium. And iron ores are hematite Fe2O3, magnetite Fe3O4. So once again, note down all these ores with their formulas. Bauxite Al2O3 2H2O, copper iron pyrite CuFeS2, zinc blende ZnS, magnesite MgCO3, Epsom salt MgSO4 7H2O, horn silver AgCl, pyrolusite MnO2, hematite Fe2O3, zincite ZnO, rock salt NaCl, cinnabar HGS, magnetite Fe3O4, galena PbS, gypsum CaSO4 2H2O, limestone CaCO3, carnallite KCl MgCl2 6H2O. These are few ores of metals and their formula. Now let's see the next one. Extraction of metals. So you have seen that metals and their ores you have seen. So ore is a compound, that is a mineral of metal from which a metal can be extracted without economic loss. And the process of extraction of these metals from their ores is known as metallurgy. What is metallurgy? Process of extraction of metals from their ores is known as metallurgy. Now let's see how the metals can be extracted. The metals like potassium, sodium, calcium, magnesium and aluminium are high reactive. Zinc, iron, lead and copper are moderately reactive. Silver and gold are least reactive in nature. Now, extraction of metals from their ores. How it can be done? This includes three steps. They are concentration or dressing of the ore. Second step, extraction of crude metal. The third step is refining or purification of the metal. So remember children, the process of extraction of metals from the ores includes three steps, and the study of process of extraction is known as metallurgy. So metallurgy is the process of extraction of metals from the ores, which includes three steps: concentration or dressing of the ore, extraction of the crude metal, then refining or purification of the metal. These are the three steps of extraction of metals. Now let's see the first step, how the concentration or dressing of the ore has to be done. Before to that, what is concentration or dressing of the ore? Removal of unwanted rocky materials and other impurities such as soil and sand, etc. is called concentration or dressing of the ore. What is concentration or dressing of the ore means? Removal of rocky materials or impurities in it is known as concentration of the ore or dressing of the ore. The impurities like clay is called gong. So the materials which are sticky and which can settle, they are known as gong materials. So the impurities like clay are known as gong. Various physical methods are used to enrich the ore. So to remove the impurities in the ore, various physical methods are used. So here when the impurities are removed from the ore, it gets enriched with the metal. So physical methods are used to enrich the ore. The physical methods again depends on the difference between the properties of the ore and gong. We know that different physical methods are used to enrich the ore, and these physical methods depends upon the physical properties of the ore and the gong that is present in the ore. The methods that are used to separate the impurities in the ore are hand picking, washing, froth flotation and magnetic separation. These are the 4 physical methods that are used to separate impurities. Now let's see the first method. So here the first method to remove the impurities from the ore is hand picking. What it is, let's see. If the ore particles and the impurities are different in one of the properties like color, size, etc. Using that property, the ore particles are hand-picked, separating them from other impurities. So here when we are trying to purify the ore, when we are trying to separate the metal from its ore, first step is dressing, means removal of the impurities. Impurities has to be separated from the ore. How they can be separated is, if the ore particles and impurities, if they are different in any of the properties like in size or in color, like we can separate the impurities or different colored particles easily. So here ore particles and impurities, and if they are different in color, then they can be separated. Like, can you separate, like in the olden days how they used to separate stones from the rice? Black colored stones can be picked up very easily from the rice. Even now also, whenever you find any impurities or when different material gets mixed up, basing on the properties, they are separated. So here, if they are different in properties, maybe of size or in color, then they can be separated by hand picking. The next step is washing. Ore particles are crushed and kept on a slopy surface. They are washed with controlled flow of water. Less dense impurities are carried away by water flow, leaving the more dense ore particles behind. So here the second step is washing of the ore. How can you, or what, in which process we can do this washing, where we can do this, with which impurities we can do this is, if the ore particles are crushed and kept on slopy surface, then they are washed with controlled flow of water. Then when these ore particles are kept on slow and water is allowed to flow over them, then what happens? Less dense impurities, they get carried away along with the water, and it leaves more dense ore particles behind. Just for example, when rice bran and husk, they can be separated. Lighter particles floats on the water. They can be separated very easily. So here washing is the process where light particles, light dense impurities can be separated from the more dense ore particles. The next step is froth flotation. The other method that is used is froth flotation. This method is mainly useful for sulfide ores which have no wetting property. whereas the impurities get wetted. So here hand picking is used for the metal dressing where the impurities and the ore are different in color or different in size. And washing process is used if the particles, ore particles and impurities are different in density, that is different in their masses, then they can be separated by washing. Now the third process is froth flotation, and this process is mainly useful for sulfide ores, and these ores, they have the property of not getting wet, means though water is mixed up in them, it doesn't get wet, but the impurities, if they are present in it, they get wet. So in this way, this physical property of the metals helps to separate metal from its ore. Now let's see what is this froth flotation process. This method is mainly useful for sulfide ores which have no wetting property, whereas the impurities gets wetted. The ore with impurities is finely powdered and kept in water taken in a flotation cell. Air under pressure is blown to produce froth in water. Froth so produced takes the ore particles to the surface, whereas impurities settle at the bottom. Froth is separated and washed to get ore particles. Now what is this froth flotation process is? In this process, a flotation cell, means a container is taken, and in that the ore with the impurities is finely powdered and kept in water in this cell. So first we have to take a flotation cell, and then ore with the impurities is powdered, and this powdered ore and water are kept in the flotation cell. Then into this cell, air under pressure is blown so that it produces froth. So here into this cell, which contains ore particles along with the impurities, pressure is applied by adding little amount of pine oil or into it, so that it produces froth on them. Froth means it is like a foam which comes, for example, when soap water or any detergent powder is mixed in water, you can see foam that rises up. Same way, when this ore particles are mixed in water and little amount of pine oil is added into it, that produces froth in them. Due to this pressure exerted into this cell, it produces froth. So here ore particles, the sulfide ore particles, since they do not have wetting property, they get raised with the froth and comes up, and the impurities, they remain at the bottom of the cell. So in this way froth is separated and then it is washed to get ore particles. This I will explain you in the next slide once again with the help of the picture. The next process is magnetic separation, which means that it is useful for magnetic ores. If the ore or impurity, one of them is magnetic substance and the other is non-magnetic substance, then they can be separated easily using electromagnets. So here if the ore particle or the impure particle is a magnetic substance, then they can be separated using this magnetic separation. Now let's see what it is. So the first figure is about froth flotation process. So this is the flotation cell, froth flotation cell, which is like a beaker, and in this beaker, in this flotation cell, the ore particles which are powdered are mixed along with the water and kept in it, and into this pressure is exerted using this compressed air. And here when the air is compressed, then the ore particles, since they do not get wet, they rise up in the form of froth. You can see that here the bubbles are seen, like which is like a foam. So this contains ore particles in it, and the impurities which are dense, they remain as gong at the bottom of the cell, and hence using under compressed pressure, ore particles comes up along with the froth, and this froth is timely separated and it is washed to get to separate the ore particles from it. So in this way, froth flotation process is useful to separate sulfide ore particles mainly, and including the diagram, this is more important, very important. The next is magnetic separation process. You can see that here there are two wheels, in which one is a magnetic wheel and the other one is non-magnetic wheel, and this is connected to funnel in which powdered ore particles are placed. So when powdered ore particles are poured into this, the belt rotates, and when the belt is moving, it moves on the magnetic wheel, and if the impurity or the ore, any one of them is magnetic, it gets separated here, and the non-magnetic one falls or moves towards the non-magnetic wheel and gets separated at another place. So in this way we can separate the ore and the impurities using the magnetic separation process. So here, till here we have seen the first step of extraction of metals, that is dressing or concentration of the ore. And in the further next class, I am going to explain the further process that are involved in extraction of metals. Thank you.